Good afternoon to you. 406 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up this hour, Congressman Eric Burlison is here. We'll talk to him about all of the former Trump officials the left is now trying to throw in prison and an effort by some Republicans in Congress to free those men. That's ahead. And then Angela Morabito joins us at 5 o'clock. Used to work in the Department of Education under President Trump. We'll talk to her about the federal government officials who are double dipping. They're taking money from you by way of salary, and they're having you pay off their college loans as well. That's ahead. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, so many people in the federal government, so deeply corrupt. And every so often, someone comes along and they say, hey, we should impose some ethics rules on these people. We should stop the corruption. There was an effort recently by Congressman James Comer. It was a bipartisan effort. Congressman James Comer, the head of the Oversight Committee, he linked up with Congresswoman Katie Porter, a Democrat, and they got a bunch of lawmakers, a couple of them, from both sides of the aisle for a bipartisan bill to impose ethics obligations on the White House, on the President of the United States. They said, you know what, we need an ethics bill. And guess where that went? The Hill reports the following this week. House Oversight and Accountability Committee Chairman James Comer and Representative Katie Porter made sure to line up an equal number of lawmakers from each side of the aisle to serve as co-sponsors when they joined forces on a White House ethics bill last month. That careful balance soon fell apart, however, after 3 Democrats backed out of their previous commitments to support the bill, vanishing, Porter said, after the White House reached out to her colleagues. Well, that's a really simple story, isn't it? So an ethics bill gets cooked up in Congress. You get members of both Republican, Democrat Party. They get together and they say, let's do an ethics bill, force the president to fulfill all of these ethical obligations. The Biden White House calls the Democrats and says, get out of this thing. We are not going to have ethics at this White House. And they do. They bail on it. The backing slipped away, said Congresswoman Porter on the eve of the bill's introduction as she was boarding a flight back to Washington, D.C. Quote, I was excited to come to Washington and introduce my bill, and I was proud I had found 3 senior Democratic co-sponsors, she said. When I landed, I was really disappointed to learn that those co-sponsors had decided not to support the bill and had had conversations with the White House. The White House declined to comment on the accusation, and 2 of the would-be sponsors, well, they denied being contacted by Biden administration associates. But the episode sheds new light on the unraveling of an effort to secure bipartisan backing for a bill that would mark a major legislative achievement for Comer, the Republican who's leading the charge to investigate the Biden family. Lawmakers and other sources who spoke to The Hill said the 3 Democrats, who included Congressman Ro Khanna of California, Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy of Illinois, and good old Kwesi Mfume in Maryland, abandoned their plans to sign on to the bill over concerns about both its content and the way it could be used against the Biden family going into the campaign. Oh no, ethics in the Biden family, that's like oil and water. That's the last thing you want to combine. Khanna told The Hill, quote, it's too partisan a tool to cudgel the president as opposed to a serious effort of bipartisan ethics reform. Well, then why did you sign on to it in the first place? Come on, let's be honest. And then why did you back away from it? Khanna said he changed his mind after seeing the content of it, he claims, and then seeing some of the statements that I thought would be used. Democrats wrote this, that Katie Porter was right there being a part of writing this thing. Then I saw the content, and I realized Biden runs afoul of all of these things. Biden is the most ethically damaged president we've ever had. So we can't pass an ethics bill right now. We'll save it. Maybe when Trump comes back into office, we'll pass all sorts of restrictions on the president of the United States. He claimed, I don't think it was bipartisan enough, but I made the decision independently. No one called me, he said with a straight face. Kwesi Mfume said he didn't get the real sense there was going to be enough bipartisan support on the bill, so he backed away from it. Really? Anyway, that's the latest on so there was an effort. There was an attempt to impose ethics obligations on the presidency. But they said, you know what? Not during the Biden era. We'll wait. We'll do this eventually. We'll do this eventually. Meanwhile, because of the ethical lapses of Joe Biden, we have all sorts of chaos going on in the United States. And that includes what is happening on America's southern border, which is just atrocious. How many more stories do we need to hear of somebody being killed or raped, assaulted because of what's happening here? We've got an awful, awful update to the story of the 13-year-old girl who was raped in Queens, New York last week by an illegal immigrant from Ecuador, an illegal alien. Daily Caller writes about this today, just a derivative piece from the New York Post, but here's what they say. The Ecuadorian migrant charged with raping a 13-year-old girl confessed to recording the incident during a court hearing in Queens. Christian Giovanni Ingalandi, 25 years old, was arraigned on multiple charges, including rape and kidnapping, following an assault of a 13-year-old girl in Casena Park. The incident, which occurred June 13th, came to light during the hearing, where Ingalandi's videotaped confession was presented, revealing he recorded the attack. That's demonic. So completely evil. He recorded the attack after initially feeling nervous, according to the New York Post. Quote, I was nervous at first, and then I got comfortable and I recorded it, Ingalandi admitted in the videotaped statement. Ingalandi remained silent and downcast as prosecutors detailed the allegations against him. Ingalandi encountered two teenagers in the park, allegedly escalated an assault using a machete-style knife, according to the assistant DA. He allegedly tied the victims up with a shoelace, gagged the girl, proceeded to rape her. After the assault, he allegedly stole their phones and then discarded them before buying drugs. He admitted, quote, I went to buy drugs afterwards. So this is who we're letting into the United States. This is who Biden is letting into the United States. I believe the word that Trump has used to describe people like this as animals. We're allowing people in who are raping American citizens and then gleefully recording the attack. And then admitting to authorities, yeah, I was nervous at first, and then I recorded it. It's just utterly disgraceful. Utterly disgraceful. And this follows on, of course, the news of the rape and murder of Rachel Morin last year, whose assailant, allegedly, was just picked up, just arrested. Another illegal immigrant from El Salvador, and 23 years old, identified as Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez. This week, I played some audio for you yesterday of Alejandro Mayorkas on CNN with Jim Acosta. Here's the two of them, just to reiterate. Neither one wants to say Rachel Morin's name. My guess is actually they have no idea what her name is, and they don't care. They just... Mayorkas says something to the effect of... Our thoughts are with the family. The criminal should be held accountable. Take a listen.
I do want to ask you about the murder of this Maryland mother that has been in the news. It's gotten a lot of attention. She was killed last year. An undocumented immigrant was just arrested in her death last week. He's suspected of multiple crimes since he crossed the border illegally in early 2023. Obviously, you know, we know.
How do you know he crossed illegally if he's, quote, undocumented? What a stupid phrase. What a stupid phrase. What a lie that is.
That the studies show that undocumented immigrants don't commit more crimes statistically than native-born U.S. citizens.
Another moronic talking point. I just want to remind people, like, so whatever the data may show, in other words, we have enough problems of our own. Why would we import more?
But what do you say to critics who blame the administration for allowing something like this to happen? Yeah, obviously, this is something that you hear in right-wing media all the time.
Why don't we hear it in left-wing media? Why aren't we hearing this with any frequency? You don't care about the rapes and murders?
Jim, first and foremost, of course, our hearts break for the children, the family, the loved ones, the friends of the individual who was murdered, the woman, the mother. Jim, a criminal is responsible for the criminal act. The criminal who committed this heinous...
Okay, whatever. He's as eloquent as Coringe is. Meanwhile, the mother of Rachel Morin was on with Laura Ingraham last night on Fox. Her name's Patty Morin, and here's what she had to say.
When you hear Rachel referred to as the individual by the Secretary of Homeland Security, what is your reaction?
My reaction is that it's a completely political statement because they're not even willing to acknowledge that she was a female, that she was a mother, a daughter. It totally depersonalizes her and makes her an object.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. No, not a sign of empathy or care in any of these statements. They don't even, I can almost guarantee you, he doesn't even know her name. He doesn't even know her name. And he was wishing Jim Acosta maybe said it or something so that he would be reminded. But neither of them knew. Neither of them knew or cared to know. So they just went along without saying her name. Laura Ingraham mentioned some of this. Randolph Rice is the name of the family attorney, also speaking with Laura.
It was repeated in a lot of the other movements across the country at times of crisis that people in power needed to know who these victims were, whether it was police brutality or other allegations of criminal activity or the Me Too movement. But in this case, they have a different approach.
She's right about that when you can personalize these things, when you can really get to know the person who was victimized, it speaks more broadly to the American people so that they have some sense of a very real person's life has been destroyed here. And this is something we need to fix. It humanizes the story. And instead, what the Biden administration is doing, with it, along with its media allies, they're dehumanizing Rachel Morin.
Yeah, I mean, they just seem to be disconnected completely from what's going on at the southern border and how it is actually affecting Americans. I mean, they are hemorrhaging at the southern border, and they are arguing in Washington about what type of Band-Aid to put on it when they should be putting a tourniquet on it and stopping this flow so that we don't have another Rachel Morin.
Yeah. The problem is the Biden administration is wielding the machete that has opened up the border. Forget about fixing it. They're the ones who cut it open. Laura Ingraham asks the mother, Patty, have you heard from the Biden administration at all?
Well, Patty, have you heard from any official in the Biden administration about your daughter and your loss?
No, ma'am. No one's contacted me personally, and as far as I know, no one has reached out and contacted anybody in the family.
Nobody. Over on MSNBC, they're covering all of this very differently. So there's Laura covering this with some empathy, talking to the family members, trying to get to the bottom of it, figuring out what our government is doing, what they're not doing, the ways that they're abusing us. On MSNBC, they're running a cover-up operation. And in fact, they're giggling about all of this, chuckling about people being attacked in the United States, 13-year-olds being raped. Here's Joy Reid and Pramila Jayapal.
But there's a lot of fear-mongering.
There's a lot of fear-mongering, absolutely.
And I think it's kind of remarkable that the polls I look at, the national polls, actually Americans still support immigrants. They support immigration.
The majority of Americans support deportations of illegal aliens.
It's just that they would like to see a system that actually works and that can keep them safe and secure. And all of us want that. And, I've been working on this issue for 20 years since before I came to Congress, in the streets as an activist.
Let me show you this is one of the reasons that people have these this sort of thinking. Here's the three cable networks reporting of this. This was our banner said, soon Biden announces legal protections for undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens. CNN's banner said, Biden announces new protections for some undocumented spouses. Here was Fox's banner, migrant arrested for raping 13-year-old New York City.
Yes.
And so I think that's part of the problem, right?
Exactly.
You have a lot
of the problem.
fear-mongering.
Exactly. And that we know that when people have economic insecurity.
Wait, I'm sorry. Let me just establish this. Did that occur or did it not occur? Is it real or is it not? Is it fake? It's totally real. The guy recorded it. He just admitted to authorities. He recorded his attack. Perhaps if you're gonna send it anywhere, most people probably shouldn't see it. Maybe send it to Pramila Jayapal just so she could see what she was laughing at. How ghoulish. And the two banners that Joy Reid cited from MSNBC and CNN were themselves euphemisms for what Biden's even doing. Biden is giving amnesty to illegal aliens, and neither of those networks had the intestinal fortitude to admit that. In fact, they ran cover for him. The only banner that resembled anything that Americans care about was the one that she cited from Fox, which is, these are the horrors of our open border. And it would lead a real journalist, not a Joy Reid, like an actual reporter, to wonder, why is Biden offering amnesty in the midst of all of this chaos? He's twisting the knife into the American people. And Joy Reid runs cover for that. Grotesque. Then Pramila Jayapal laughing. Migrant arrested for raping 13-year-old. She laughs in response. An update on the Rachel Morin tragedy. An attorney for the family today, in a press release shared by Bill Maluzhin, saying this: Patty Morin, this is the mother of Rachel Morin, expressed her gratitude for the president's call this morning. That's President Trump who called her this morning, stating, quote, I am deeply touched by President Trump's kindness and concern. He was genuine and truly wanted to know how our family was coping. He asked about Rachel and showed honest compassion for her untimely death. His words brought comfort to me during this very difficult time. So a couple of reactions from the Morin family. Disappointment in the Biden administration for dehumanizing their daughter, and gratitude to President Trump for humanizing her, for calling them, for expressing his condolences. Coming up, Congressman Eric Burlison is going to be with us. We're going to talk about all of these Trump officials who are either in prison or headed to prison because the left hates their political opponents. Congress working on freeing these men. We'll talk to this congressman about that in a moment. Hey, good afternoon to you. 4:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Angela Morabito talks to us, as she so often does, about education, in particular as federal government officials are bragging about how you've been paying off their student loans and then thanking Joe Biden for that. Hilarious and awful. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. There is an effort afoot to stop the political persecution of all sorts of former Trump officials. A Fox headline this week: January 6 subpoenas against Trump aides would be revoked under a new bill. There's a new House Republican-led effort to revoke subpoenas that the House Select Committee on January 6 sent to key aides of former President Trump, they write. Congressman Andy Biggs of Arizona, Thomas Massie of Kentucky, and Eric Burlison of Missouri have introduced a resolution this week to rescind subpoenas that the now defunct committee sent to Steve Bannon, Mark Meadows, Peter Navarro, and Dan Scavino, all Trump officials. It would also withdraw the contempt of Congress resolutions that were filed against each individual over his defiance of those subpoenas. Quote, the committee was used as a political weapon with a singular focus on taking down Trump and his advisors through the intentional manipulation of facts and the silencing of the minority party, Burlison announced on X. The subpoenas issued by the illegitimate committee for Bannon, Navarro, Scavino, and Meadows were insufficient and should be rescinded. And the contempt of Congress referrals based on those subpoenas should be withdrawn, he writes. Thomas Massie wrote on X that time is of the essence. Speaker Johnson should immediately bring this resolution to the floor for a vote. Former January 6th committee chairman Benny Thompson, one of Nancy Pelosi's henchmen, told Fox News Digital in response to the effort, quote, thankfully, this resolution will have no impact. That's Benny Thompson's claim. The subpoenas issued by the Select Committee were litigated exhaustively, with contempt of Congress charges going as high as the Supreme Court. Sadly, it's just the latest attempt by House Republicans to subvert the rule of law and do Donald Trump's bidding. Nothing will exonerate Trump from his actions on January 6th. Nothing will change the fact that Bannon and Navarro are convicted criminals, he says. Former Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office declined to comment for the report. As of Wednesday, the Republican legislation has 22 now additional co-sponsors beyond the 3 lawmakers who are already supporting it. Bannon, Trump's former strategic advisor, and Peter Navarro, his former trade advisor, were both sentenced to 4 months in prison in cases stemming from those contempt referrals by those Democrats in Congress. The Department of Justice did not prosecute either Meadows or Scavino, though. Pelosi established the Select Committee in mid-2021. That was in response to what she calls the January 6th attack on the Capitol, when the former president's supporters stormed the building in protest of his election loss to President Biden. An initial vote to create a 9/11-style commission to investigate all of this passed the House, 35 Republicans and all Democrats, but it died in the Senate. The House subsequently voted instead to create a Select Committee. It had just 2 Republican votes, but guess who those were? That was crying Adam Kinzinger and Elizabeth Cheney, who were selected by Nancy Pelosi, not by Republicans. Republicans offered a host of perfectly acceptable options, and all of them were rejected by Nancy Pelosi. Republican critics of the panel have used that fight as evidence that the committee was a partisan exercise there, and of course it was. So here are the ensuing questions about all of this. One, is Benny Thompson right? Is Benny Thompson right that this Republican effort, were it to go through the House, would have no impact whatsoever on the jail terms, on the sentences for Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon? I hope not. I fear he might be. The other piece is, if this is effective, why now? Why not a while ago? Why not upend all of this so long ago now? Instead, it's gotten this far, quite unfortunately, with these men in and headed to prison. So that's an issue. It's a big issue. I'm hopeful here. I sent it around to some lawyer friends this week. They seem intrigued by it, but nobody quite has the answer for me. Now, I was hoping to have an answer for you right now from Congressman Eric Burlison, who is supposed to be on the air with us, but is not on the air with us. I don't know if you've noticed. He's not on the air with us right now, although this is his effort. He's pushing for this, so perhaps he's consumed at the moment with something else. But I did want to bring that update to you, that there is an effort afoot by these Republicans to liberate these guys of the burden of this jail time, which is just awful. And now I'm being alerted by Corey and Ganamort that Congressman Burlison is finally on the phone. And for that reason, we go now to Congressman Eric Burlison, who represents Missouri's 7th Congressional District, and he's a member of the House Oversight Committee and the Freedom Caucus, too. Congressman, good to have you with us. Thank you, sir.
Great to be here.
Congressman, I was just telling the audience about your effort to revoke these subpoenas and the contempt of Congress claims against all of these men. Tell us, what is the reality of an effort like this? Is this symbolic, or can this really liberate them of the prison sentences that they've been handed?
I think it is more than just a symbolic gesture. It does have some weight to it. When you have Congress, who right now is silent on this situation, and in our silence, we're basically underscoring or supporting the previous position, which is of the Nancy Pelosi Congress, that these gentlemen should be held in contempt. Mm-hmm. And I think we owe it to them. We owe it to history books to undo this horrible damage that was done by the January 6th committee and the previous Congress. So, and then that being said, we're in our resolution, we're having the Speaker send a message to the Attorney General, the Justice Department to suspend or revoke any prosecutions related to this. And now we can't direct him, we cannot force him to do that, but at least we can send that message. And then any kind of appeals that are made will, it definitely is going to be a benefit to, for example, Steve Bannon, who is, appealing. He'll be able to have this as evidence in that appeal.
So a subpoena from Nancy Pelosi's January 6th committee just consisted of what? A majority vote from the members of that committee? Is that how that worked?
It just consisted of the chairperson of the committee sending the subpoena. Okay. The rules, which is a violation of the rules of the committee. when they set up the committee, it was set up against the rules that the minority leader is allowed to appoint a certain number of members to the committee.
Right.
Pelosi wouldn't allow McCarthy to make the appointments. So
yes.
She made Republican appointments, Cheney and Kinzinger, but did not even complete the rest of the appointments. So it was only those two. So instead of being a committee that has a population of 13 members that only had 9 members, so it wasn't meeting that rule requirement. And then furthermore, there was never a minority or ranking member. So there's not a ranking member that's required under the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And under the rules, when a subpoena is being sent, the chair of the committee has to consult with a ranking member. So how do you send a subpoena when there's no ranking member to consult with?
Perfectly good question.
That's why the subpoenas that were submitted from this committee, that was a bogus committee, are on their face illegitimate subpoenas, and that's the message that we have in this resolution. I think it's a very common sense, very logical format, the way that we've drafted it, and it's hard to argue against.
So you're arguing in this resolution that the subpoenas are illegitimate for all of the reasons you just laid out, and I think I agree with you from my perch. But you're also explicitly retracting them, correct?
Yes. So we're getting rid of them, and then we're also sending a message or having the speaker send a message to the Attorney General notifying them of this. And I think that, those three things will hopefully send a message that needs to be sent. Look, when I come back home, people are frustrated. And I used to tell leadership this, I'm just a freshman. Look, I don't know all the levers of power yet. I haven't figured them all out, but I do know frustration. And whenever I would talk to leadership, I would say, what are we actually going to do about all of the weaponization that's happened against us, all of the American citizens and people close to Trump and Trump himself? How are we going to actually respond to this takeover of the justice system? And, their response to me was, we're going to reform FISA. And I thought that was pretty weak sauce. Yeah. That's all we're going to do. I was hoping that they would say something like, we're going to use the Holman rule. We're going to zero out all of the salaries of all these people that abuse their position, or, something. We're going to defund the FBI's new headquarters, or more than that, like use the power of the purse. But we weren't doing any of those. They said, we're going to reform FISA. And then ultimately, we really didn't even fulfill that. We didn't fully reform FISA. That was a scam. So we're still, in fact, instead, Congress reauthorized spying on American citizens in the reckless way that's been happening again, quite unfortunately. And we expanded it. We expanded what they can spy on. So Congressman, so let me. One of the questions I had for you on this subject, on rescinding these subpoenas for these Trump officials, which of course Biden and company are merely attacking for their politics, is why now? I wonder why it took so long. Is it just that nobody had thought of it, or you are finally able to kind of develop a political coalition who would support this effort? So honestly, I'm a freshman. I expected other people to do something like this. No one has been doing anything. Out of great frustration, I talked with my staff, and they did some research, and this is the course of action that we came up with. I shouldn't, it shouldn't take a freshman to have to, push through to actually stand up to and do the right thing. But that's basically what happened. And luckily, I had some good people that provided some guidance along, in these last few weeks. Andy Biggs, Matt Gaetz, Thomas Massie's office, Chip Roy, all of these offices provided a lot of really good input into this resolution. Yeah. I mean, look, the thinking here is pretty novel. You're dealing with a completely novel issue, an illegitimate committee throwing out subpoenas and then consequentially leading to jail time for their political opponents. It's just awful and unprecedented here in American history, so it's a completely new thing.
And even from where I'm sitting, I'm not a member of Congress, but I hadn't even contemplated, you could rescind the subpoenas. But I'm glad someone thought of it, Congressman. I'm glad you put in the work to do that. Do you think that other Republicans are going to get into more of a battle rhythm here where they are thinking proactively about how to deal with all of these things, or is there still a lot of go along to get along you're seeing in Congress?
Oh, God, I hope that there's more people willing to take up the battle. But unfortunately, my experience, the 18 months I've been up there, has been complete disappointment. I think that if you ask me, can this makeup of Congress truly save America, I would say there's no way. They can't cut spending on things like the FBI's new headquarters, and then they want to tell us that, but we're gonna deal with the mandatory spending that, because that's bankrupting the country. I don't buy it. I don't think anybody has the fortitude to do what's right in that building, the current makeup of Congress. Now you've got a lot of members that do want to do something and are willing to make the tough decisions and take the tough votes, but they're a minority. And so, but I think while they are a minority, I think that there's a tipping point. There's a point in which, if you had a dozen more hardcore conservative type candidates who were there to save America, I think that it might tip the scales and be contagious enough that you get the rest of them to go along with you. Yeah,
if you develop an America First bloc in Congress that really has some power, you could really make a lot of positive changes. Congressman Eric Burlison from Missouri, working to liberate a bunch of Trump officials from the tyranny of the left. God bless you. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time today, sir. We've got Mike calling in from Woodbridge. He's on line 2. Mike, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Hey, Vince, I missed the congressman's name, but I want to applaud him for, as a freshman, walking in, smelling smoke, finding 3 feet of sewage on the floor, and seeing flames. And the first thing he did was, how the hell do we put the fire out and stop the sewage? He didn't blame it on, didn't look for a bill, didn't look for a vote, didn't look for this. He found a solution. I am so damn tired of elected Republicans and the people that he's talking to who are like, well, it's no big deal. It's an old thing. It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. They cheated. It matters. You have to educate the public. And until Republicans start lining up to act like damn firefighters and tear apart this corrupt machine that the left has built for the last decade, we will not be able to restructure and reinstitute the republic. We are living in a post-constitutional United States of America, and until we fix it, we're going to keep on going in this direction for a third world beep-hole country.
Mike,
and I applaud this Congressman.
Mike, that was Congressman Eric Burlison, lesser-known congressman, of course, from Missouri, a freshman congressman. I was impressed by his answer when I asked him why it took so long, why now. I thought that he might actually become defensive. Oh, but he didn't become defensive at all. He straight up said,
I'm right there with you. I'm right there. I thought that was going to be the same thing. And honestly, I called in. I was trying to catch him before he got out there. I wanted you to be able to ask him, are you going to back Anna Paulina Luna's resolution? I don't know why 200 plus Republicans are not already signed on to her resolution to call for inherent, what is the term?
Contempt.
Inherent, you know what I'm talking about?
Inherent contempt.
Put him in for contempt of Congress.
Yes.
Inherent contempt of Congress. We have a Trump supporter in jail today for contempt of Congress, and Merrick Garland is acting like he's above the law.
Yep.
There's a simple solution to this. You show him he's wrong. You sit his arms over with a damn AR-15, slap his ass in cuffs, and drag him in there.
You do what they're doing, which follow the law here. You can do it. Inherent contempt.
Use the power they created for you.
Thank you, Mike. And if you do that, maybe then they put their arms down. They're, wait a second, we weren't looking for this fight. Well, you found it. Coming up, we're going to be joined by Angela Morabito. She worked in the education department under Trump. She's got some thoughts on federal officials who are bragging about taking your money to pay off their student loans.